The economy is in a confusing place right now, and there's a lot of speculation around this one word.
The latest sign that we may be headed for a recession.
Are we actually in a recession?
I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession.
So what actually determines when the U.S. enters a recession? It's not this, or this, or this. No one chart determines a recession. Rather, it's these 8 people, a group known as the Business Cycle Dating Committee. Here's how this group decides when the U.S. is in a recession, and why knowing that date is so important.
It matters if you're going to lose your job. It matters if your income is going down. It matters to business if they're going to be selling fewer cars or fewer televisions. So our entire economy is oriented towards producing more. And a recession is when everything goes wrong and we go in the other direction.
Knowing when a recession starts and ends is important because it can inform how we respond to these downturns later. This group of economists is selected by the NBER, or National Bureau of Economic Research. Each member on the committee is an expert in, well, business cycle dating. Business cycles are patterns of peaks or high points and troughs, low points in economic activity. That period between a peak and a trough is a recession. The NBER has been dating business cycles back to at least the 1920s, but formalized the committee in 1978. The committee is nonpartisan, and its makeup doesn't follow set guidelines. The number of people on it can vary, and some have been there since its inception. It's included people like former Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke.
Thank you.
What they try to do is seek balance and really even-handed data-only approach to just looking at the data and what they show and put the politics out of it.
The committee doesn't meet regularly, only when economic data looks like it might be reaching a peak or trough. So what are the data they're actually looking at? The NBER officially defines a recession as a decline in economic activity that's spread across the economy and lasts more than a few months. To track that economic activity, the committee looks at several indicators: income, employment, real sales, personal consumption expenditures, or the value of stuff bought by people in the U.S., and industrial production.
What they try to do is they try to look at broad indicators that measure all of the economy at once.
Across these categories, they're looking for 3 things: depth, which is how far indicators are declining; diffusion, which is how far the decline has spread across the economy; and duration, which is how long those declines last. If each shows deep declines lasting a long time, that would mark a clear start to a recession. Just take a look at 2007, when all of these categories saw a significant drop after December. But it's not always so clear-cut.
The economy is this dynamic organism, and it doesn't always behave according to the textbooks or the conventions about how we think it should behave.
The time that each indicator peaks can vary widely. This chart shows how many months before or after a recession start date that some of these reached a peak. For example, in 1980, sales started to decline 10 months ahead of the committee's economic peak. Or look at 2020, when the committee called a recession at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, even though the downturn had only lasted 2 months. James Paterba, the president of the NBER, explained the reasoning on CNBC when the start of the recession was initially declared.
The depth of this downturn is such that the committee felt comfortable labeling that as a recession.
Yeah, the thing with these economists is they want to be scientific, but there's some art to this too. There's some kind of just like feeling around a problem and just saying, we got to make our best call.
This method of calling a recession isn't standard. Many analysts and commentators across the globe look at GDP, or gross domestic product, for guidance on when a recession has started. GDP is a measure of how much goods and services a nation produces. The common rule of thumb is that any time it declines in 2 consecutive quarters, that indicates a recession. You can see that was the case in 1990. But again, this data alone isn't enough, because
the challenge with that is that how much stuff we produce as an economy doesn't tell the whole story. It only tells part of the story.
If you look at 2022, GDP did drop in these 2 quarters, but employment, a key indicator for the committee, was still strong. So the NBER didn't call it a recession. At least, it hasn't yet. That's because the committee usually doesn't call a recession for months down the line. Just look at the start of the 2008 recession, which the committee didn't make an official announcement about for a year.
The fact of the matter is, a lot of these data that they're looking at are revised months or years down the road. And so when they make these declarations, they want to be on firm ground. They don't want to be revising the dates that they put out there as often as the data are revised. So they tend to act with a little bit of a lag.
So when the committee does make a call, it doesn't often have that much effect on the current economic situation. Still, knowing the precise time a recession has started is important politically.
When someone is running for president or re-election, people make judgments about whether that person has done a good job in office. And so we look at whether there was a recession.
And it's also important economically.
By having that sharpened view, they could kind of do some analysis of, well, what were interest rates doing around then? What was inflation doing? What were jobs doing? So by sharpening your view of the past, the hope is you can make better judgments about the present.
Though the committee hasn't yet determined if the U.S. has entered a recession, economists in a WSJ survey think we're likely headed into one this year.
During and after the COVID shock, there's just been a lot of turbulence in this economy. And so we have indicators going up and down in divergent directions that make it very hard to read how the economy is behaving right now.
And since the committee is backward-looking, there isn't a clear timeline on when or if an announcement could come.